Good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Access, a social media program presented and produced by the UWI Open Campus. I'm your co-host, Cherise Glasgow, and this is my co-host, Dr. Cleveland Sam.
Thank you, Cherise, and good evening to you.
Good evening. Dr. Sam?
Yes, good evening to you wherever you are in the Caribbean joining us. And Cherise, what do you have in store for us today?
Well, this evening we'll be speaking about the UWI Open Campus culture and how it can be preserved. Our guest today will be Dr. Francis Severin. He is the culture steward and he is also the deputy campus principal. Dr. Severin, welcome to Let's Talk Access.
Thank you very much for this warm welcome. Thank you to Dr. Sam. It is a pleasure to be on this program tonight and to touch base with our regular audience. It is pleasing and the particular topic I think is an exciting one, and I hope our folks listening all over will find it equally as exciting as I think we know it is.
All right, thank you, sir. I'm going to read a quote for you, Dr. Severin, before we start asking you questions. And I quote, "Organization culture and also known plays the most important role in shaping the behavior of its employees, thus also playing the most crucial part in carrying forward the vision of the organization. Under these circumstances, organization culture is bound to impact the individual work as well as personal lives. And organizational culture can be thought of as the persona of an organization, which decides what employees perceive and think and how they behave in their job roles." And this is an article I found on LinkedIn about organizational culture. And I thought it really fitting as setting the platform for us this evening. Over to you, Cherise.
Dr. Severin, tell us, what does culture mean to you? And yes, how does the culture steward role tie into that?
Yes, okay. Thank you very much for that, Cherise. I used to be a sociology lecturer at advanced level, and that is what preceded the CXC Cape. And culture was very much a part of the subject matter of sociology, and there are various perspectives on it. The one that has really stuck with me and has left to me an indelible mark on the way I perceive culture, it's really elegant quotation, I would say, by sociologists referred to as or named Clyde Cloghorn. And he simply says, and I think it's quite profound, he simply says, culture is a design for living. And that is what it is. And I also like what Dr. Sam just quoted. It underscores and it epitomizes the persona of the organization. I would add, it gives the organization its character. And that is important. Why? Because, and as several perspectives will show, that culture can be either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. If your culture is toxic, if your culture has negative attributes, so to speak, then it is a liability. When it is positive, when it is perhaps embraced, that positive culture is embraced by your organizational members, then that can be an unequivocal and really a fundamental strength. Now, for me, if one is to break this down further, I'm not too sure how familiar, well, I hope that you're all familiar, and that might date me with the artist, the reggae artist, Peter Tosh. A lot more people know Bob Marley, but Peter Tosh, for me, had very conscious lyrics. And I was just sort of reflecting, ruminating over some of his lyrics recently. And the song which I like so much is that song that he sang, Feel No Way. I'm not too sure whether Dr. Sam is familiar with that one. And here's what it says. And I'll tell you why I quote it. And it may become more apparent to you as I speak. And as I quote it, he says, no bother feel no way. It's coming close to payday, I say. No bother feel no way. Every man get paid according to his work this day. Now, payday, of course, is a metaphor. It's an allegory. It doesn't mean the literal payday. It means that, you know, when the dust has settled, when the chickens have come home to roost, really, you know, this is what would happen depending on what you have done. So I think our parents would tell us, what you sow is what you reap, or how you make your bed, that is how you lie in it. And
yes.
Here is the point. He says, or he sings, cannot plant peas and reap rice, cannot plant cocoa and reap yam, cannot plant turnip and reap tomato, cannot plant breadfruit and reap potato. And indulge me some more. Cannot tell lie and hear truth, cannot live bad and love good, cannot live up and get down, cannot give $1 and want a pound. And the last chorus is, which I think I like the most, because it is most practical in our everyday lives. Cannot be wrong and get right, cannot be kicked and don't fight, cannot drink water and get drunk, cannot drink whiskey and stay sober. I don't know that from personal experience, but what I do know is that, you know, what he's saying here is that it is the way you shape your life, aka culture, that is the outcome that you get. So you cannot drink whiskey and stay sober. You cannot have water and get drunk. And that, to me, epitomizes for the layperson what culture is all about. And culture is dynamic. We are the agents of culture. Culture unfurls, culture develops. Culture is not just something that, you know, drops from the sky and so on. And that is why the whole, you know, debate in psychology about nature versus nurture is so important. And if we take all of this on board, one can begin to perceive that culture cannot change without some sort of intervention. You cannot take it for granted, you know. You actually have to intervene, you have to work with it, you have to do certain things with your staff in order to bring about the culture that you hanker after. And this, in a sense, this is in a rudimentary sense, what the Culture Steward initiative and program is all about. I hope I have through that illustration captured.
Very detailed response.
Yes.
Having read your bio several times for various webinars and events, one of the greatest factors is how extensive it is, and your work, your years of experience having worked in the UWI and Open Campus. I know that the various roles you would have had would have pinpointed you for this being the culture steward. Can you give us some more about your background, how you started with the Open Campus and its legacy institution?
Well, you know, look, let me even go further back and historicize, as our Vice Chancellor loves to say. Look, when you grow up in what we used to call before, perhaps derisively, a non-campus country, the islands, the small islands, as it were, the University of the West Indies is for you a monolith. You hear about it, you know, occasionally someone comes back from UWI, St. Augustine, Keville, and Mona. And that's what we, you know, and of course we are the School of Continuing Studies. So you knew this place, in the case of Dominica, on the Emsall Road, the School of Continuing Studies. And you always aspired, you know, you wondered what happened behind those walls. And you wanted to be somehow a part of this. So as we say, as children, when we grow up, this is what we want to be. And therefore, when I got my chance to go to Cavell, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to go, as we say, abroad. I wanted to go to the University of the West Indies because I felt there is a place with bright Caribbean people and people with the, I suppose, quantum of melanin that was comparable to what I had in my own skin. And people you could identify with. And of course, so I went to Cavell. And there's nothing, and I make no apology for that, and I've said that in other fora, there is nothing like a good liberal arts education. A good liberal arts education. So when you sat at the feet of people like Professor Woodville Marshall, Professor Hilary Beckles, Professor Alan Cobley, Anthony Dev Phillips, Professor Pedro Welsh, all of these people, you really, your appetite gets wet and you want more. Now, fast forward, I get out of Cavell, I have some stints with the School of Continuing Studies where I teach in the part-time, program. They used to call us local tutors at the time. I suppose the term might still be used, but it was in person, face-to-face. How could we have foreseen the future? And I taught history for social sciences, for law and social sciences. I taught introduction to sociology and so on. So all of this shaped, what my interest in culture. Of course, I said I have taught A-level sociology and history, Now, I went to work at MONA, well, at the University Center, it was called, in Office of Administration and Special Initiatives, with Professor Marlene Hamilton, program officer, alumni relations, and so on. But all through that time, what I think became, or what really struck me with awe is our lecturers, the depth, the breadth. I would go to summer institutes, in North America and so on, and you got some very nice big folders, colorful sort of documentation. But in the end, you didn't think you got depth, but at the UWI, you got that sort of depth. I am saying that it is that preservation of what to me was sacrosanct. That intelligence, that quality is part of what has driven me today, not only to want to work with the UWI, but to ensure that it is an organization that we never lose. I am thinking that if you fast forward to now, our ideals, our core values and all of those sort of things, the whole aspect of student-centeredness, gender diversity, gender justice, excellence, integrity. If we preserve those things and if we strengthen those core values, then ultimately it is going to be the kind of place that both our staff and our students would want to be a part of. And I think that is powerful, and that will allow us to overcome any financial travails, which incidentally, all institutions are facing today. Not only higher education institutions, but institutions across the board. So if you ask me, what is going to keep us together? It is a positive and dynamic culture to which each of our staff, every single staff, would want to embrace and would want to be part and parcel of. And that is that would be the forces that cohere us together.
All right. So you have been with the university basically all your life, Dr. Severin.
Well, if you're so kind as to say that, yeah. Well, yes. I look, and it's amazing. Something becomes second nature because I really, it's like about 21, 22 years now. Well, 1st January 1999, I became part of formally Before that, of course, I worked at the School of Continuing Studies on a part-time basis and so on. So there is indeed a relationship with the University of the West Indies. And then if you take it back to 1988, when I went to Caville campus, I mean, you're really talking about a good 30-something years, really. It's been a long time. And I treasure the University of the West Indies for being responsible for who I am, for my growth, quite apart from, of course, my own background and socialization at my home.
In Dominica, the nature island.
The nature island of the world.
All right, so basically what we were trying to do is to set the background for why someone like you really and truly can play the role of a culture steward for the University of the West Indies Open Campus. And you have really, in eloquent terms, gave us that type of information. So my next question to you, Dr. Severin, really is, what can students and staff expect of you or from you as the culture steward for the campus?
Yes, well, let me say to you that we have, and that is very important. It's going to be a bottom-up approach, okay? So I want to put into its proper perspective what they can expect from me. In fact, I would reshape the question, if I be so presumptuous, to say what can they expect from the culture stewards, because it's going to be a team effort. And I was very buoyed when we had our inaugural meeting on, well, it was last Friday. I think that was the 16th of April. And I just, went around the Zoom and I asked our colleagues, our culture stewards, and we have about 25 or so of them from across the region, to tell me what is it culture means to them. And it was so amazing what the whole cross-section said. I mean, I cannot quote and say everything, but here is an example, and I'm going to quote this one to make the point of what can be expected from us. So one of our culture stewards said, it means being a living example of the university's core values, owning and upholding the agreed culture every day by my actions and exhibiting the right behaviors consistent with the desired culture, and encouraging my colleagues to do the same. Being fully engaged, passionate about my job, and being committed to the supportive culture where employees respect each other and genuinely care for each other so that we can work together as a team to ensure the success of our campus. It also means being responsive to the needs of our students and stakeholders. And that sort of reflected the general view. But here is another view that to me gave what the culture steward herself spoke as a duality. It means that I am going to be an agent for student first and staff first. Students first in how we serve them, and staff first because it is important that we take care of those who are called to serve the students. It is a complex balance, but what we do at the Open Campus requires that duality. It should not only be reflected as employees of the UE, but as persons of the region. And yet another one had said that we have to begin to focus not only on the financial aspects, but the non-financial aspects, so emotional intelligence and those, because if truth be told, one would lead to the other. And I think what I got out of what my culture stewards had said is that it is in treating with your staff in a fair way, in a positive way, in a way that makes them feel part of the organization, you will get that transferred to the way that, to the treatment that they mete out to the students in turn. So in other words, if you take all of this on board and you put it together, you know, what can you expect from the culture steward? You can expect, you know, a few things. The culture stewards know that they have to be conversant in, for instance, what the initiative is all about, okay? They have to, and that is why they come from various departments within the open campus. They have to keep abreast of the matters in their respective divisions, departments, and countries. They have to, in a sense, be ambassadors and advocates in those respective divisions. And I want to be very clear on this matter. The culture stewards are not watchdogs, or else we would have called them that. They are not police, or else we would have called them that. They are stewards, and stewardship. Stewardship is a very important concept.
Very.
In theological terms, in biblical terms, really. It presupposes a sense of responsibility. It has a pastoral meaning to it, that you're given, you know, a certain important and sacrosanct role and task is vested in you.
You're entrusted with something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But not only that, but to whom a lot is given, a lot is expected. That kind of sensibility has to come into it. And you don't take those gifts and bury it. You take these gifts and spread them. So there is that song, that Christian song, love that is kept inside will surely fade someday. The only gifts we ever keep are those we give away. This is the sensibility of stewardship. We can expect, and our stewards have been asked to, for our next meeting, to brainstorm on priority areas that must be focused on in terms of our campus and where we're going to take that culture to. Make practical recommendations and suggestions to the deputy principal as matters arise, because we recognize that it is a continuous process. It is not a stagnant and stationary picture. It is a picture that is iterative. It's a picture that's unfurling and becoming, you know. We expect our stewards to encourage fellow staff and students to embrace the core values. And it is not, if I should use that term, Pharisee. By that I mean, we're not going to be Pharisees and say, I am happy, I'm not like them. It is not that at all. It is an embrace of our students and our fellow staff. And in fact, what I want to say here tonight is that we could not have everyone as culture steward, but I do not want anyone out there, any of our staff or students, to think that this is somehow the elect, you know, like in Calvinist doctrine, this is the elect. This is not what it is about at all. It is a sample, I would like to think, of our staff who we know have been embracing our core values over the years. We want also to be constantly identifying factors that will improve or enhance the effectiveness of the role of the culture champions, or stewards, sorry. We also realize that we cannot depend only on ourselves, but from time to time, we have to access certain, you know, training that we may not have within the body of culture stewards. And this is what we want to do, and this is what will become apparent as this thing gels and gets together, so to speak.
Right. So thank you so much. So from what you're saying, this has to be something that is deliberately fostered and articulated and everything,
right,
with the students. Cherise?
Yes, Dr. Severin, what we've been hearing from you so far is you speak about a lot of the various core values of the UWI in terms of integrity, student-centered, excellent, diversity, gender justice. Give us some more detail about how the role of the culture steward fits in to these values?
Yes. Okay. Excellent, excellent question. And let me preface my remarks in that regard with the reality of the open campus. And that is why, again, those who do not have that reality of a distributed environment may take it for granted or may not even think of it at all. But here is the reality. We are in 16 countries. We are in 50 or thereabouts different buildings. That's important to because it means that even the physical building can give you a siloed effect. Plus the fact that you're in 16 different countries, we have 24,000 learners and students in 17 countries. We have to deal or relate to 40 plus bank accounts, 9 currencies, 500 full-time staff, 800 or thereabouts adjunct staff, 8 bargaining units. That, for some who are not accustomed to this, will create something or will sound like something of an intimidating nightmare. How do you bring all of this together? Yeah. Can you speak of it as or can you ever achieve what in sociology we might call homogeneity, a homogeneous culture? Is it necessary to achieve that? Or would you have a heterogeneous culture? The truth is that variety is important. But I think what we're trying to do is to achieve a certain standard within that context of variety. A simple example, culture. I lived in Jamaica for a little while. And when I first, so I was speaking to someone and really perhaps may have been, well, I'm sure I was probably complaining about something that had troubled me, and the person told me, hush. Now, in Jamaica, the hush, and there's an action that goes up, along with it. Hush, and you might get a little tap on your shoulder, and there's a particular tone. But if you're not accustomed to that, where you have come from the Eastern Caribbean, and hush means to shut your mouth, really, it really can rock you back. So
very, very true.
Yes. So you're not going to. So when we talk about culture and achieving a kaleidoscope within that standard, we're not going to say to Jamaicans that you must not tell your colleagues hush, because that would mean something else to them than it means to someone in the Eastern Caribbean. And of course, I would have had to be very careful when I went back to my country and told people to hush. I would have to quickly say to them, it really means it's actually a comforting sort of term to say, hush, don't worry about it. I use that as, to me, the best example that can come to mind to show you that we have to look at those nuances and deal with them. Now, tell me, if, and simple matters, if, in terms of even something like student-centeredness, and that term is used very often. If a student writes to a staff member, and even if the staff member may not have direct responsibility for the matter for which the student has written, is it okay for the staff member to simply ignore the student, not respond? My response would be an unequivocal, no, it is not okay to do so. It's not okay either to ignore your colleagues. You may think that your colleague has no right to send you a particular message, or this is not your task or your role. But there's a way of saying to the student or your colleague that, I'm afraid that this is not my, I cannot help you on this because I don't have the necessary information. However, give me a chance and I will get someone who can help you. And you can say that via email or on the phone, what have you, but you don't just simply ignore, and I'm saying that these are the kinds of this is an integrity issue as well, that you have left a matter hanging, you have not brought it to the attention of the right person because it is not your role as far as you're concerned. So you have done two things. You have, in a sense, compromised another colleague, since that colleague whose responsibility it is to deal with that, you have not brought it to that colleague's attention. And that could not be good for that colleague in terms of the performance of his or her duties. Even something like, we have a lot of people with the same names. And sometimes when you write an email, it may go to the wrong, Deborah, for instance, or it may go to the wrong Francis. I don't think you have many Francises, but it may go to the wrong Deborah, for instance. You don't get that email and just ignore it. You get back to the sender and say, look, Francis, you sent this email, but I'm sure you meant for Deborah so-and-so and not myself, and rather than just leave it in your box. It means that you have not helped your organization to resolve that particular problem for the student or for another staff member or for a stakeholder. That is an integrity issue. Gender justice, for instance. You cannot, as a leader, and I've always been, that way, as far as I'm concerned, it cannot be that you come to conclusions and you make judgments based on the gender of the person, all right? If, for instance, there's a role that is to be filled and you're doing it internally, it cannot be that you say, well, that person is quite young, but I would have taken a chance if it was male. But, young and female, I don't think that person will be able to handle the department. Those kinds of things annoy me, and there are people who think that way, okay? Diversity, of course, that's a big thing throughout the world. We saw, of course, the case today with Chauvin being found guilty. And talk about culture change and culture stewardship. It is those shocks to the system that bring about change in what I suppose Karl Marx may refer to as the dialectic mechanism. Because when you shock the system like that, when a white police knows now that it is quite possible to lose his life, that is his living, lose his family, he may have daughters, a father going to jail for 40 or so about years, we're still yet to hear that. Because because of your prejudgment, you think it's okay to kneel on a man's neck for 9 minutes. But the system shocks you and it shocks others looking on, because that's what it's all about, It's not a direct person, but what are the implications for others? So when people look on, for instance, when staff look on and they see a staff member who is rude to other staff members, a staff member who is rude to students, but he or she may be competent in terms of actually, well, I don't know whether you can be competent and rude. I don't think that those things go together. But let us say you are good technically at what you do, but then you're rude to everyone, you're obnoxious, people don't like to work with you and so on. To me, you become a millstone around the neck of the organization. And if staff looking on, particularly junior staff, and they see that in spite of your behavior, your disposition, your posture towards people you seem to be promoted, then that in itself can shift the culture. That can make people doubt. That can lead to what sociologists refer to as normlessness, anomie. You know, that it can actually cause people to think or to make a direct relationship between rudeness and promotion. And I may be exaggerating to some extent, but the fact is that that is how people think. This fella is absolutely rude, obnoxious, but yet he gets promoted and so on. That is not good. So we're talking about excellence, and how do you define excellence in that regard? We have an annual Principles Award for Excellence, and that is why we have to be so careful with that itself. I have had to, in a sense, on one occasion at least, step in to say, no, I mean, this person really should not even, and people can self-elect, so to speak. But, and I'm happy that there are checks and balances, because step in and say, no, you cannot have a staff member who is known for negative attributes winning the Principles Award for Excellence. That will compromise the principle, and it will also cause normlessness and anomie in the mind.
Sends the wrong message as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are the ways that you become granular, Cherise, with your core values, and see how it has true meaning for the culture steward, or for culture stewardship. Let's put it that way.
All right. So in terms of the actual rollout of the Culture Steward program across the campus, as you mentioned, we operate in diverse places, diverse campuses as well, locations. How are we going to roll this out practically across the organizations in terms of the activities and the people involved and so on?
Yeah. Well, we have, let's, first of all, we have put together a committee, and Cherise is in that committee. About 5.
Congratulations, Cherise.
To actually launch, for the launching, okay? And I'm not afraid in terms of, and that's why I said earlier that we have that wide reach, in the sense that we have selected colleagues from all departments, who are in their neck of the woods, and who can bring the perspective of that particular jurisdiction, department, and country to bear on things. You see, when you have arrived at a stage where people have confidence in you, people trust you, then it is very easy for people to have conversations with you. And the role of the culture steward is not really to tell on people or to, bring tales, or to witch hunt. The role of the culture steward is exactly to build trust, but that we have and we have to determine what activities, and we're going to brainstorm on that, what activities that we will be a part of. So it's not intervening to correct bad behavior or infractions or violations. It is actually, in a sense, and that can be part of it too, if for instance, we're asked to comment on something. But it also has to be positive interventions, programs like these. When, for instance, and I sit on as deputy principal, I have the privilege of, for instance, chairing evaluation and promotions committee. Now, there's so much you can learn in these things. If you see repeatedly that objectives are not well set, or objectives are not collectively set, that is injustice. If for instance, there's a certain, let's say, personal attack in terms of those performance appraisals, as opposed to an objective and clinical sort of a approach, you see those kinds of things. Now, you're not going to take each case by case, but you're going to see, if you see trends, then you're going to try to make recommendations or interventions or suggest training that would preclude those things happening in the future. When you sit as the chair of the academic board subcommittee for student matters, you see a lot of grief in terms of what our students go through. Those are the kinds of, in a sense, qualitative type of research that can inform, how you treat with your students. You're better placed to tell a staff member who is rude to a student that, look, you must realize that your actions can actually cause a student to drop out and abandon and jettison their dream, and probably the first person to go to college or university in the family, to jettison that because you did not respond to the student or you were rude to the student, and you might be the straw that broke the camel's back. We don't have camels in the Caribbean, but you know what I'm talking about. In other words, it is when you build up empathy and you take an empathic approach when you see what some of our students go through en route to completing a degree, the tragedies in their lives. I have to tell you that we have a student, of course, representative on the culture stewards, and I've given the Guild of Students it's leeway in terms of how, in other words, that student represents them, and they would have the leeway in terms of how they interact with and feed information to that student and so on. But of course, it would not have been complete without a student rep. So on both fronts, staff and students, it is a matter of modeling the right behavior, but also a matter of identifying issues that perhaps are prevalent, that are perennial, that come up at those kinds of meetings where we're well placed to see what affects our students sometimes and our staff as well negatively.
Okay. But before we go on with the next question, I just want to encourage our viewers watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter to submit your questions for Dr. Severin. They will be answered during the Q&A session. Dr. Severin, you have expounded on culture during this entire conversation. Tell us, the Open Campus is so distributed, is so diverse. Culture is it's so dynamic, as you have said earlier. How would it affect this program in terms of not only country-wise, but also age as well, gender as well? How do you think that would affect the program going forward?
Yes. Well, you see, very good points again you make, and those points have to do with the core value of diversity. Okay, and one of the things that I was careful to do, I think our staff at the ATS level, administrative, technical, and service staff level, may tend to think that a lot of committees in the university, and we have tried to counter that, but they may tend to think that a lot of them, our academic, senior administrative, and professional staff preponderate on them. The Culture Steward Committee, we have tried to redress the imbalance, so to speak. If you look at it, we have admin assistants, we have clerical assistants, we have office attendants. We were trying to have a better balance in terms of male, female, but that's always a difficult proposition. I suppose everything—
Talk about diversity, sir.
Well, yes, exactly. No, but I mean, we have tried to achieve it in certain ways, in terms of levels. But you know, we will always be struggling throughout our society, because the university is a microcosm of the society, and you will always struggle along the lines, almost tidily, if you want to invoke that term, with the 80-20 sort of imbalance between male and female in terms of participation in higher education. So you're getting that kind of thing repeating itself in participation in committees. And that is what happens. Of course, we're still, you will agree, Dr. Sam, still struggling with the irony of, in spite of the greater participation of females, it still happens, the reality that in terms of power relations, in terms of boardrooms and so on, you still have, in terms of politics, politics in particular, you still have the men at the upper echelons, so to speak. And if the women were to withdraw their support, the men will all fall through, because they are the greatest organizers on the ground in politics. We all know that, you know, but the men benefit from the work of the women. I'm not going to say more on that. But the fact is that I think we have a reasonable age distribution. And the open campus, another exciting part of it is that we have a lot of adult learners. I don't have the statistics here now, but I'm sure the principal always brings that out in her presentations at the various university fora and meetings. We have part-time, students. So a lot of our students are employees. A lot of them are working. Some of them are employers, really, entrepreneurs, and that kind of thing. So, that the culture steward proposition is going to be a little more difficult, in the sense that you're not dealing with the typical, or probably could be easier, who's to tell? You're not dealing with the typical, archetypical
population, yeah.
That 19, 18, 20-year-old age group. So you're dealing with a wider cross-section, and as we would say in St. Vincent and Dominica, people who are formed, already. So that has its challenges, but hopefully, as I say, charity begins at home. When you can bring about some change in your staff approach to students, then that can have some wonderful effects. And we're hoping that there's certain standards by which people go by, irrespective of age and so on. One of the things that has guided me as a person, but throughout my career at the University of the West Indies, and I would say that to staff, when I have seen staff who are senior, say program officer level, being a bit dismissive or perhaps brusque towards, say, an office attendant who is perhaps quite often older than that quote-unquote educated staff member, young member, I say, you have to ensure that in whatever way you interact with colleagues, remember to ensure that when they emerge from that interaction, that they emerge with their dignity. So even if you bring someone before an appeals committee, even if you're doing a performance appraisal with a staff member, you may be the boss. In terms of age, the person is senior to you. You may be dealing with a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, whatever. Don't allow the person to emerge, or don't do anything that causes the person to emerge from that meeting with you a broken person, because it's not ad hominem. We used to learn in use of English, those good old days, yeah, use of English and so on. You know, it is not the man or the woman that you're attacking. You are dealing with the behavior or the performance. And if we can follow those simple ideals, then people, you can feel that, okay, you have not done what you're supposed to do, and these are the consequences. But you're not mortified, you're not humiliated, you don't lose your dignity in all of this. And that is so important as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So we have about 10 minutes to go, and I think there are about 2 questions. But before we go to those questions, Charisse, Dr. Severin, in terms of the Culture Steward Committee of which you spoke, could you just reiterate first, what is the makeup of that committee? Where are they coming from? I imagine you have to be collaborating with the various departments and units across the campus, countryside, etc.
Yes, we have, no, I don't have the structure in front of me in terms of the persons, but what we have done, and in fact, let me tell you how it came about. I had pinpointed a few persons who I had identified first of all, but I also contacted the various heads of divisions, and I asked for nominees, and heads of division nominated. Some would ask me, have you seen anyone who you think would be, suitable? I have very good colleagues who really, trust me. So there was that negotiation as well. So it is a mixture, so to speak, of colleagues saying, divisional heads saying, okay, fine, I'm suggesting such and such, or some saying, okay, you know that division very well. Do you have anything in mind? And from that, we had from the principal's office, the deputy principal's office, CSDR, APAD, all of the marketing, all of the divisions. I think there are still 2 outstanding, which I want to resolve. But basically, I think we have a nice broad cross section of people from offices, quote unquote, but also sites. Very important. Right. North, south, east, west. What we used to call it Los Angeles.
All right. Charisse, you want to go for the first question to Dr. Severin?
Your mic is,
Yeah, Charisse, you need to unmute.
Mm-hmm. Sorry about that. The first question is basically what you were just saying. How the person asks, how have the stewards been selected?
Yeah. Yes. So it's that. It is. I I don't like the expression handpicked, but it is an understanding and agreement between the deputy principal, aka chief culture steward, and the divisional head of department. And in fact, it's interesting that, for instance, I tested my knowledge of staff, and I would have made a few suggestions, and a particular head of division says, well, director says, well, I asked the head of department to select or to nominate someone, and they came up with the same person that I had suggested, So that, of course, is a kind of, you get a sense of people, you get a sense of who various persons are, and it comes to that. Having said that, I'm always making it clear that I am sure we could get another 20 and another 20 again. But it is just, you know, by dint of chance and life that you have, you know.
Just to feed off of what you're saying, it's not like these are the chosen few. The other persons in the department still need to feed into that committee, because that committee on itself doesn't hold all the knowledge that we need to push forward the initiative.
Spoken like a true culture steward, you.
As indeed she is.
Yes.
All right. There's another comment. I'm just going to read part of it for you. I want to thank Marie for the comment. It says in part, culture has to be cultivated. A garden can grow on it as its owner perceives or wishes it to become. So the garden should have a vision. The gardener should have a vision of his or her garden. So what is your vision, Dr. Severin, even as we have 5 more minutes to go? What is your vision for the Culture Steward program at the Open Campus?
Well, I thank the person for that. I mean, this, we obviously missed that person. This, no, this is profound. This is deep, really. And if I were at St. Augustine campus, I would think that it's a student pursuing a BSc in agronomy. But the fact, no, the fact is that I think it's simple. I think we tend to underestimate the effect of ourselves. And here is what I'm saying. The University of the West Indies has shot up, you know, has broken out into the world stage in terms of the Times Higher Education rankings. But we all know that in terms of financial resources, we are not like the Ivy League and so on, which are basically higher education banks. We don't have those resources. So guess what has caused us to get up there? Wouldn't you say by isolating the main factors that it would be our human resources? Yes. This is what got us there. Our sheer brains, sheer human resources. And this is why culture is very important. And I'm saying that any challenge and difficulty that we have, even the financial travails that we go through, can be conquered by those very human resources coming together and doing the right thing. And what we have to do? One love. We have to respect each other. We have to afford each other dignity. We have to understand that each one of us has a part to play. You know what a gentleman in the Chauvin case said, one of the lawyers says that all of these lawyers came together to make this thing work. And we did not have all Michael Jordans in it. Because Michael Jordan, well, I don't know his style. You know, I'm not a big basketball fan. But he said Michael Jordan may not have been passing the ball. You know, he was that great and he, whatever, dribble you call it, I don't know. But because you had different people on that team who were passing the ball to each other, they were able to emerge and to prevail in that way. I am saying that if you want to talk about a vision and a philosophy, it is simply that when we bring all our strengths together and we cultivate that into a culture that is respectful, that is tolerant, that appreciates diversity, you know, that places the student at the center. If the student is not present, then we don't exist. That has integrity, then we can create a powerful organization.
All right, Sharice.
Yes, it's all about the synergy. Dr. Severin, thank you so much for joining us tonight, taking the time out of your... Yeah. I know we can go on, But we are coming to the end of the program. We just want to thank you for taking the time to inform us and enlighten us some more about the role of the culture steward. And we hope that our audience, both internally and externally, would have been able to get a better grasp of what this role is about and what this initiative would need from each member of our community. Dr. Sam?
Yes, thank you, Sharice, and again, thank you, Dr. Severin. And tomorrow we'll be back here at 2 p.m. EC time. That's 1 p.m. in Jamaica and 12:30 p.m. in Belize, 12:30 p.m. in Belize. And tomorrow we'll be bringing you a very interesting program on creating effective teaching and learning environment with two special guests. So tomorrow, 2 p.m. EC time, 1:30 p.m. Jamaica and 12:30 p.m. Belize. We'll be back here on the UWI Open Campus Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube platforms. Thank you so much to our audience who joined us on social media this evening, and a special thanks to our technical team, David Foster, Patrick Johnson, Richard Bath, Marcia Reed, and Louis Boxell, who are monitoring the platforms for your comments. On behalf of Sharice Glasgow, my co-host, I am Cleveland Sam. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.